What's up, you guys? It's John here, and the weather forecast out of Washington, D.C. is it is raining money again. It never stops. I mean, I can't believe this. Another $484 billion in stimulus approved today. Don't worry, guys, it's not real money. I wish. But sooner or later, the US dollar is not going to be real anymore with all this money being printed anyway. So the Senate approved this relief package, the loan program for distressed small businesses that already ran out of money. That's part of that $2.2 trillion stimulus that we talked about in a previous video. If you don't remember, I'll put the link up here somewhere. So of course, there's negotiations between Democrats and Republicans going back and forth, jockeying for position. What else is new? That's just American politics. It's kind of like a sport, you know, like you got this team and each team has their fans and they always go back and forth. And the only people that really win are the players getting paid millions of dollars and the owners making billions of dollars, and the fans, i.e. the American people, kind of get shafted most of the time. All right, so as we know, the emergency injury disaster loan, EIDL, I like to call it, basically already ran out of money because, yeah, all the businesses are hurting and all of them applied. The very sad thing about that is it came into light that a lot of big companies that really shouldn't have been receiving that money did. One of them, which, I mean, I hate to say it, I like the food, Shake Shack, got $10 million. But of course, now that there's public backlash, they'll return it. They're not the only ones. I'll go over a list of who else, got all that money that I shouldn't have later on. All right, so this $484 billion, they're talking about is just a fraction of what's coming. They're saying in the weeks to come, there's gonna be another trillion, maybe another trillion, because they're always talking about future bills. I mean, how much is this really gonna add on to our national debt? I think we've staved off inflation for now, and especially after the last financial crisis, but we're really like digging ourselves in a hole here, not to mention no business is going on. So that means there's gonna be no tax revenue. I'm really worried about the future of inflation. One cool thing about this stimulus is that it provides $25 billion for additional testing, which we need, obviously. I mean, it's hard to fight this epidemic if we can't even identify it. This is especially important because some states are already talking about reopening. Like I talked in my last video, some parts of Florida, the beaches are open again and people are going out, as the death toll in USA is already approaching 40,000 people. All right, so this Senate approval came 2 weeks after Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, first asked Congress for an expedited infusion of $250 billion to shore up the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. But since then, the funding has lapsed and the program was unable to process applications for millions of companies. Democrats, they didn't want it to be just by itself, so they called for the package to be twice as large. They got more money for hospitals, testing, state and local governments. Of course, they had to do their posturing, fighting back and forth, but fortunately, with the fate of the country hanging in the balance, they came up with a deal. So let's break this down by the numbers. So you've got $320 billion for the small business loan program. You got $60 billion set aside for smaller lending institutions. You've got $60 billion for the SBA, Small Business Administration's disaster relief funds, and that's divided into $50 billion in loans and $10 billion in grants. You've got $75 billion for hospitals. So I mean, one interesting thing to me is that these senators can approve trillions of dollars in relief funds and stimulus packages adding to our debt. They don't even have to be there. Now they can just vote online. Yeah, it's kind of like a video game for them, I'm sure. So here are some mind-boggling stats. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, it took only 13 days to exhaust the $349 billion. That covered 1.6 million loans from nearly 5,000 lenders. Normally, that would take over 14 years. Wow. 13 days. So when that type of volume from 14 years gets squished to 13 days, some things happen. So one of the biggest things is that large corporations got the money, and that really hurt small business owners because there was nothing left for them. One of the biggest names that I'm sure you've heard of is Shake Shack, got $10 million. So let's go to that right now. Clean up on aisle 5. Okay, so it wasn't just Shake Shack. You also have Potbelly, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and some other large publicly traded restaurants that received these funds while small businesses were shut out. So there was public outcry, and yeah, that's kind of not fair. I mean, they could just raise equity, and Shake Shack did. They got 150 million. You know, if I had a restaurant, I couldn't just pull out 150 million from investors. So it's good now that Congress has passed money that will hopefully get to the small businesses that need it the most. So while this episode of How the Stimulus World Turns is coming to an end, I'm sure there's going to be another $500 billion to trillion to 2 trillion stimulus on the horizon coming up. So don't be scared. It's coming. Hopefully it comes in soon. Hopefully the stimulus really keeps our country afloat, because the stock market the last couple days didn't do too well. Oil hit negative. How is that even possible? Actually, I know how it's possible. We've made so much oil, but no one's using it. There's no planes flying. There's no cars driving. And the oil has to be put somewhere. So we're running out of room to store this oil. So now people, well, at least for a brief period of time, figured it was better to pay people to store the oil. Crazy considering at the beginning of the year it was $60 a barrel. Anyway, that's another story for another time. Remember, my next video is coming out at 3 p.m. This is the top 7 real estate YouTubers every homeowner should subscribe to, and I subscribe to, because I think YouTube is actually better than regular TV. I can actually see people that are talking about things that I want to hear about instead of the same blah, blah, blah formulaic stuff you see on TV. So this next video is going to be really informative, and if you follow those channels as well, I'm sure you'll find incredible value. I hope I created value for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.